The second coming of our Lord Jesus Christ and our hope in that great glorious event becomes the greatest motivator for our joy, the greatest motivator for our service, and the greatest motivator for our holiness.
Before 2010, the country of Haiti had little history of earthquakes. But tragically, that all changed on January 12th of that year when a 7.0 magnitude quake shook the capital of Port-au-Prince, killing tens of thousands and flattening everything from the smallest shack to the tallest government buildings. As the Haiti quake shows us, just because a catastrophe hasn't happened in the past doesn't mean it couldn't happen in the future. Today on Grace to You, John Macarthur is showing you a catastrophe that is on the horizon, and it'll be far worse than anything the world has ever experienced. So how do you prepare for it? And how do you get ready for the end of the world? Here's John's answer to those vital questions as he continues the study, Where in the World is History Headed?
Because it is true that the second coming has such tremendous potential for spiritual motivation in the life of the church, it is also true, then, that Satan works very hard to deny the second coming. If Satan can effectively get the church to look away from the second coming or even to deny it as a reality, then he can remove a rather significant spiritual hope, spiritual motivation. Now, you need to remember that Peter is writing this brief epistle in an inspired effort to assist Christians to discern false teachers and to have the theological power and the spiritual resources to overcome their influence. So Peter was facing false teachers, as we do, as the church does in every generation, and they've always been around, who will deny the second coming and deny judgment. So as he opens this last chapter, that is what is on his heart. The first 9 verses focuses on the debate regarding the coming of Christ and future judgment. Verse 10 affirms that judgment. Verses 11 to 18 talk about the implications of it on our conduct. So Peter takes direct aim here at a debate. First one is argument by ridicule. Argument by ridicule. Verse 3. Simply knowing this first, that in the last days, mockers will come with their mocking, following after their own lusts and saying, where is the promise of his coming? The first statement I want you to notice, mockers will come with their mocking. So says Peter, in the last days, mockers will come with their mocking. By the way, he takes a strong Hebrew form, puts it into the Greek. Mockers with their mocking, a very strong form to emphasize what they do. They attempt to attack the reality of Christ's return, Christ's judgment by ridicule. It isn't an intellectual argument, it's an emotional one. It's not a strong, logical argument. It is really simply intimidation of something that is ridiculed as a silly belief for weak, non-intellectual minds. And it plays on disappointment. It still works today on some who are intimidated by the so-called intellectual elite who will deny the return of Christ. But notice the second argument. They go really beyond this, and this is an argument they don't want to make, but it's an argument that Peter makes for them. What is really interesting is the argument from morality. Verse 3. The end of the verse says, these mockers will coming with their mocking are following after their own lusts. Now, friends, here's the true motive. Here is the true motive. Following after is walking. This is their lifestyle. Walking means the course of conduct, the course of lifestyle. They are walking after their own epithumia. What is that? Passion, sexual desire. Now, by the way, we've already met these false prophets, and do you remember what characterized them? Go back to chapter 2, verse 2 for a moment. In chapter 2, verse 2, it says they follow sensuality. They're sensual. Verse 10, it says they indulge the flesh in its corrupt desires. Verse 13 says that they are stains and blemishes. They revel in their deceptions. They revel in the daytime. They are perverted in their conduct, and they're so flagrant they do it during the day. Verse 14 says their eyes are full of adultery. They can't look at a woman without literally seeing her as a sexual partner. They never cease from sin. Down in verse 18, it says they entice by fleshly desires, by sensuality. You see, false teachers who know not the truth and know not God have nothing to restrain their flesh. And so they are brute beasts who are driven by passion. They deny, they mock the second coming of Jesus Christ. Why? Because they want to pursue sexual, sensual pleasure without accountability, without retribution, without consequence. It's the bottom line. Their mockery is built on their morality. You see, they want an eschatology that fits their conduct. All moral perversion among religious people must have a theology to permit it. Right? So they develop a theology to permit their perversion. Listen, if you believe in the second coming and you believe the Lord is coming back and all of us are going to give an account for our lives and we're going to be rewarded on the basis of what we've done and certain things in our lives are going to be burned up, and if you believe God is going to reveal the secret things of the heart, as 1 Corinthians 4 says, then John is right. Whoever has that hope in himself purifies himself, right? Because when he comes, I want to be pure. But if I don't want to be pure, if I want to live my dissolute, passionate life, then I got to get rid of any future accountability. So I talk a lot about grace, and I talk a lot about the inward kingdom, but I don't ever talk about judgment and accountability. I don't talk about God being a righteous judge who demands holiness and who chastens sin. You see, the hope of the return of Jesus Christ means we have an ultimate point of accountability for how we live. Let me give you something you might not understand at first, but think it through. I believe that liberal theology is not the product of intellect. It is the product of immorality. It is the direct child of passion. It is an effort to deny spiritual accountability. Michael Green said, anthropocentric hedonism always mocks at the idea of ultimate standards and a final division between the saved and lost. For